All right, hi everyone. This is Brad from Board Game Geek. I have to apologize for my messy house. I am moving, as you can see, and I also need a haircut, which is part of the moving. Just haven't had time to do all that stuff. But thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm here hanging out with Chris of Codito. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Brad?
Good. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I think this will be a blast. We're a big fan of your games, and we're sad to see you guys take a little break, but we just want to take this moment to just, highlight what you guys have done for our little niche of the hobby. I think you've really brought a lot of core experiences to this platform that a lot of people I think shy away from the maybe deeper Euros, and you guys are diving in headlong, which is really awesome.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. You guys have been big supporters for a long time, and it's nice to, I've always tried to be involved in the community as much as I can, so it's nice to sort of have this chance to maybe answer some questions and wrap up a few loose ends or whatever, and say goodbye for now.
Definitely. Yeah, and those that are watching, if you have any questions for Codito, you can ask them on the Board Game Geek page comments. You can also ask them on the Google Hangout page or on the YouTube comments. I will be checking all of those periodically, so we'll keep tabs on them. All right, I'm gonna pull up Raw, which I believe was your second game. While I do that, do you mind just giving us a kind of a rundown of the games you guys had released?
Sure, yeah. So we got underway in 2010. And it's funny you should start with Raw because it all actually kind of started with me. I've had a long history of noodling around with board game adaptations just as a hobby, and I had done some iPhone work in 2009, and had a little time on my hands in between contracts, and I was thinking, oh, I'm just going to noodle around and maybe make an iPhone version of Raw. And I got a little ways into it, and I thought, I should do the usual thing and see if anybody's already made it. Um,
Right.
and so, of course, I jumped onto Board Game Geek and searched around, and lo and behold, I came across a posting from somebody saying that Reiner Knizia was looking for developers. And that was actually the posting, I think, was about a year old. But I went ahead and just replied to that person. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was on Board Game Geek who had posted that. But so that's how I got connected to Dr. Knizia, and he, as we well know, was very aggressive. Probably one of the earliest
Right.
designers, not only to embrace the iPhone world, but he was very. I think the word aggressive has been used in terms of trying to get people to put his games out. And I was really happy to learn that Medici, Ra, and Tigris and Euphrates, which were my top three choices to bring to the platform, were available, and he was very happy to hear that somebody was interested in taking those on. So we put Medici out in July of 2010, and Raw came out in November.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we didn't really start the blog. I'm sorry, until 2011. Yeah, was that
That's
what it
right.
was?
February 14th, 2011. I looked it
Yeah,
up today.
and I don't know why we chose Valentine's Day. I cannot remember. I think it was a day of the week type of thing, but we did not think it through. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, it's
Um,
very funny. I was going to say, so there was the official sort of announcement posting on Valentine's Day, and then a few days after that, or maybe even the next day, there was the announcement that uh, Incinerator Studios was going to be bringing Ascension to to iOS, and of course, as most people know, they renamed themselves Playdeck, and the rest is history. And then the third blog posting was about an update to Raw, which had just come out. So
And was that adding in multiplayer, probably?
I can't remember probably at that point because you know what? It might have been a. Oh yeah, that was. Remember OpenFaint
I do remember OpenFaint.
before Game Center even.
This is
So
pre-Game
yeah,
Center days,
we were pretty much in the Wild West.
yeah. Yeah, and you're talking like pre-async in Game Center. This is all before then, which is pretty crazy time.
Yeah, that's right. So in 2010, the iPad had just been announced when I was acquiring licenses. Came out in April, and then the iPhone 4 came out in June. So that was like immediately we had to start supporting another form factor, which actually wasn't too bad because it was pretty close to iPad 1 resolution.
Right.
IAP in-app purchases had been around for about a year or so, but they were really still in their infancy, and I think even Apple was still kind of trying to figure out, what they were going to allow, and certainly it was nowhere near, it's basically taken over the market now.
Right.
And what was the other? Oh yeah, there were 250,000 apps in the App Store when Medici came out, and now there's about 1.2 million, I think. So, so yeah, it feels a little like ancient history, even though it was only 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a different time now. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So, if I can embarrass you, I want to read some things that some people have said about you. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So designer Alan Newman had some nice things to say. He said, "I've been a fan of Codito since Medici hit the App Store. I was impressed by the quality of the production. A lot of love had to be invested into the project. About a year later, I contacted Chris, trying to feel him out about working on one of my own projects, but he was already deeply into his very busy schedule with games like Raw and Tikal. I became a beta tester, and along with a few net buddies, we've tested almost all of the Codito games. The feedback process has always been in-depth, relevant, and exceptionally professional. Chris has been genuinely passionate about putting his best effort out on the App Store."
Awesome. Yeah, Alan's become a friend more than just a beta tester. He and a few other guys that really have stuck with us since, like you said, pretty much since the TCal days at least.
Yeah. I'm not doing very good on this Raw game, I just have to let you know. Yeah, definitely. No worries. So yeah, just playing some Raw here. If you guys haven't checked this one out, you definitely should. We also will have some codes to give away after the broadcast. If you want to ask us any questions or leave some comments about Codito, we will enter you to win a code, which I will give out sometime before the end of the weekend, as soon as I can. Yeah. Oh, someone just retweeted us. Awesome. Cool. So, yeah, I know, obviously, that brings us to today. Do you just want to let people who are watching just know a little bit about, the decision to go on hiatus and kind of, the decision behind that?
Yeah, for sure. We were trucking along pretty well right up until Hav came out. So just to finish going through the timeline, TCal came out in April 2011, followed by Puerto Rico, which of course was a huge release for us and
Right.
for Ravensburger, obviously. and cause of much confusion from trying to put apps on sale and having to explain that Puerto Rico wasn't actually ours, but published by Release Parker.
Right.
um, Tigris and Euphrates came out in November of 2011, so I can't believe we put out 3 games in the space of 1 calendar year. It'd be crazy.
That is crazy.
And then Le Havre came out in June of 2012, and that was, I definitely feel like, that was, it was a peak in a lot of ways. We had a lot of good features in there, and really had kind of felt like we'd come into our own, and well, it happened a little bit with Puerto Rico and Tigris and Euphrates, but Le Havre really kind of, I was really proud of that one for sure, and it did quite well, and so we were enjoying that success, and basically, in typical fashion, had dove right into Through the Ages.
Right.
And so we worked on that for the rest of 2012, and then, as I think most people know, Vlada Chvatil decided to pull the license and go with Czech board games. And I think there was a post fairly recently that I think maybe finally explained that a little more.
Yeah.
That Czech board games had not just offered him, more creative control, but they were talking about updating and revamping the actual printed board game, and all kinds of things like that. And we were just basically too far along to really absorb those. And of course, for him, it was the right decision to be able to have more control and work with the publisher that he was used to working with already. So he pulled the plug basically, and that was kind of the beginning of the end for us, because as I think you know full well, it's hard to absorb. I guess it's hard for any software company really to absorb 6 months of work and nothing to show for it effectively.
Right.
And I want to be clear that I don't have any hard feelings, but the facts are that that's what happened. And so I had another developer working on Brief History, and a third developer working on Tesla's Revenge.
Right.
And so I had to let them go. And so it was back down to myself and the artist who has worked on most of the games. And so we, kind of kept going, tried to do our best to keep ourselves going at that, team of 2 kind of size. And we managed to get Brief History out in July of last year, and again, I felt like we did a pretty good job and brought a lot of things to bear that we had learned along the way. But it's kind of not in that same tier or category as Le Havre or Puerto Rico in terms of popularity.
Right.
In terms of, the board games, the original board games popularity, that is. So the numbers for that were, decent for where it is on the BGG charts as sort of the mile stick or yardstick, I guess. But not enough to kind of right the ship, I guess.
Right.
So over the course of the summer, last year I was also trying to see if I could find another partnership or some other way of keeping things going. I had some pretty interesting conversations, which I suppose are still confidential. So let's just say there were some fairly familiar names involved. And just timing and those kinds of things never quite worked out, and I needed to be making some money, so I went back to what I had done before I started on this board game journey of sort of more meat and potatoes software development, I guess. And so I've been doing that since September and trying to kind of keep things coming along. And just an interesting little. I wanted to sort of give a little bit of the actual numbers just for interest's sake, and again because I think with 6 games that we've published, there's enough data there that I think it can be maybe useful or interesting, but you don't have to give out numbers for just one game, which Apple generally doesn't like.
Right.
So just to kind of give you a rough idea,
Yeah.
in the second half of 2013, which includes the release of Brief History, so there's usually a pretty decent spike when you have a new game come out. And of course, we've had some sales along the way. So we had a total of about 40,000 downloads across the 6 games that we published, so not including Puerto Rico.
Right.
I'm glad I won't have to make that caveat for a while. So that was about 40,000 downloads over 6 months, and works out to our revenue is actually works out to 50% of the App Store price. So
right.
Apple takes 30, and our standard agreement with designers has been that the designer gets 20, which is based on Reiner's sort of his standard contract.
Right.
So we make 50 cents on the dollar, and so for those 40,000 downloads, we made about $40,000, which is a lot of money when you think of it as a chunk of money, but in terms of trying to run a company and pay even just 2 people, that's not a lot of money.
Right.
And then for the first half of this year, which we just finished, of course, it was basically half those numbers. So
right.
no spike from a new release, a couple of sales, I think, but and then for those in the Android market who are maybe curious, we have Tigris and Euphrates is our only Android game, and people have asked why we didn't port more, and the main answer is we didn't have time.
Right.
We didn't have the resources to do that. And so that came out in April of last year, 2013. And according to Google, 8,000 unique users have installed it, and
Oh, wow.
we made about $9,000.
Right.
So the numbers just aren't there to support a full-time business, really. And I have lots of thoughts in terms of maybe ways that we might have had things happen differently, but at the end of the day, I think it boils down to there would have needed to be some kind of outside funding.
Right.
And just for me, especially because this has basically been my baby and me actually basically doing most of the work except for the art, I didn't want to bring in an outside source of funding and risk kind of being beholden to somebody who might not know or be as passionate about the industry as I am.
Right.
All those kinds of things. It's just it's maybe we would have had a longer run at things, but it's hard to say, and there's pros and cons with every business decision you make, of course.
Right. That makes sense. It's tough. It's a tough thing. We do have a couple questions though.
Sure.
Larry's asking. Obviously, you can't tell us numbers exactly, but which game has been purchased or downloaded the most? What's your most popular game?
I'm pretty sure it's, well, probably Puerto Rico, but
Right.
you know, there's that caveat, and I don't want to give out any. I certainly don't want to give out any numbers,
Right.
because
Oh
that's
yeah.
not really
No,
not
no.
our. But in terms of the Codito published games, it's almost certainly Le Havre. Um,
Okay.
Tigris and Euphrates is pretty close, um, mostly because it's been out for quite a while. But
Right.
definitely Le Havre. And I think, it's interesting. Again, I think it was in a lot of ways our most complete game, other than Brief History, which came out afterwards. Um, but I also think, it was. There's definitely a correlation in the rankings on Board Game Geek.
Hmm.
We've kind of had that. I don't know if it's luxury, but we've had that data point, I guess, of with having put a bunch of games out. There really is. They're kind of like three tiers in our games,
Right.
um, which directly correlates with the number of downloads. So Le Havre was certainly the most popular.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say,
So,
I wonder sometimes if it's interesting because that was the first game that had the source art in it.
right. That's true.
And as much as, of course, we had the inevitable complaints about getting all that source art on the screen, um, that I think it did resonate with people a little bit more because of that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Um, yeah, I lost in Medici just now. No, but yeah, I'm not paying much attention here. If you're looking for strategy tips on any of these games, this is not the time to get them. I am
And
mostly just focused on on
don't
checking
try to have a
questions.
conversation and play a Codito board game. It's
Yeah, that's
so I can
maybe
tell you
some
a
of
funny
that lighter
story.
stuff, but no.
I can tell you a funny story about Medici since it's
Yeah,
right there, and
I'll
you
keep it up.
just
Sorry.
lost to the AI. I remember so Reiner. This is one of the things that sort of happened with Vlada, unfortunately, is I didn't realize, and this is I take complete ownership of the fact that I hadn't really talked to him very much, um, and it was because Reiner is very hands off. Like he wants to see the almost finished version and have a chance to give you some feedback, but he's a really busy guy. He's got so many things going on and so many games out there that he's always been quite hands off.
Okay.
Um, so I kind of made that assumption about Vlada as well, and we had put out Tikal, and Wolfgang Kramer is also had not really had too much desire to have any input.
Right.
Um, Vlada obviously would have preferred to, and in hindsight, I really wish I had known that or had taken the time to find that out. But anyway, with Medici, I sent the almost finished version to Reiner to play, and it was quite funny because again he'd been very hands off, so I don't think he really realized that again this is basically me writing the game, right?
Right.
So I got this comment from him that I should have a talk with the AI programmer because the AI was very poor at that point. And he said, "I'm not sure if your AI programmer actually understands the game."
Oh gosh.
That was very, I fortunately I'm the kind of person that sort of takes that kind of thing in stride and just laughs at it because it
That's
is.
very good. It's a good
Uh,
trait to have. Oh my gosh.
so needless to say, we fixed up the AI after that. Or should I say, I fixed up the AI after that.
The royal we maybe.
Yes,
Uh,
yeah.
so I'm gonna switch over to something else. I'm trying to decide here. I don't think I can play Le Havre and talk and pay attention at the same time. I think my brain will melt. But
You could show it, I suppose.
I could show it. Yeah, I could show myself making silly plays. I'll do that. But we have another question from Maximiliano. He asks, When you decided to create the Sage engine, was it an idea that came while you were developing an app, or did you create the engine like after you'd done a few of the games?
I suppose a little of both. With any engine, there's always going to be an evolution.
Right.
Um, but definitely from the beginning, and it was, we were we were fortunate uh, that it really was the Wild West, and what I think when Medici came out, there was like Carcassonne, Catan, Samurai, and Small Wonder were like, that was
Right.
pretty much it in terms of recognizable names. So there were a bunch of the Kinesia games, but most of them were sort of smaller, lesser known. Um, and so when we were, there's the royal we again. Sorry. When I
Yeah.
was when I was trying to acquire licenses, it was pretty Wild West. So we were able to get a bunch, and that I this is sort of my naivete slash where the industry was at that point. That I was just kind of, I had set up a Facebook page and all that kind of stuff before we had, really made any kind of a publicity splash. And I was just sort of posting, hey, we got this license, and hey, we got that license. And it was pretty much just friends who were following us at that point. Um, so we managed to acquire a bunch of licenses, and then we were asking for beta testers on Board Game Geek, and somebody, did the thing that we all do now, which is they Googled us and they found our Facebook page, and it was like, oh my God, look at all these licenses that these guys have. Um, so another little anecdote there, but it meant that even when I was starting on Medici, I knew that there was going to at least potentially be a long list of games, and so part of the hope was that I could build an engine and reuse it and improve it over time, so that each subsequent game would take a little less time to develop.
Right.
Uh, I also had hoped that I'd be able to hire more people to help me, uh, which that part didn't really work out. But uh, the engine helped a bit. But again, it was another sort of interesting finding with this whole process, is that it helps a lot to have some of those core pieces that you can reuse. Um, but because of the fact that we, as you alluded to earlier, we've taken on some of the big, more complicated games out there. Um, every game really took almost the same amount of time, because by design I was working on more and more complicated games over time. And so the savings of having the engine were kind of outweighed by the fact that, I mean, Le Havre, look at
Right.
how many buildings there are, right?
It's a very different kind of game.
I thought Puerto Rico was a lot of work, but Le Havre was a whole other thing.
Yeah, it is. It is quite different. Um, oh man, I have to pay gold. Dang. I am a. So you guys know at home, one of my favorite part about the Codito games is the hint button. A lot of times I won't know what the best choice is, and I will just hit that hint button, and the AI will tell me what I should do, which I wish I had in real games sometimes. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing now, because then basically I'm just playing the AI's game for it, which is maybe more entertaining than me hemming and hawing.
well, it's definitely something that I've tried to make the games more accessible,
Right,
help people learn them, because I knew our core market was going to be people that had played the game and people that knew about the game but hadn't had a chance to play it. I wish I had a dollar for every time somebody sent me an email saying, "This has been sitting on my shelf at home and I haven't unwrapped it yet, and now I'm going to because I played your app," right?
right.
that was really gratifying to whenever we heard that. But it was definitely part of what we were trying to do. Um, was make it more accessible, but it meant more work as well. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, because obviously every feature is time, right? Nothing's free in coding.
yeah, that's right. And I think board game players are like every other app user, maybe even more so. They want all the features, right? You've got to have an AI, and you've got to have online play, and they want to have a tutorial. And I can't fault anybody for that because that's what I want too when I sit down and play a board game app. But it does take more time.
Right.
I think that's been part of it too. Is again, I'll fully admit that I was somewhat naive coming into it, and I I suppose I might have had a crystal ball and seen that okay, they're going to come out with different resolutions of screens, and that's going to mean they're going to need to support different file sizes of the art and that kind of thing. But
Right.
it was sort of hard to see that in advance,
Right.
and I guess I didn't also think that it was going to be that sort of part and parcel of not really realizing how much maintenance there was going to be for
Mm.
every game. And I know that's certainly been one of the things we've been criticized for, and rightly so. I haven't been able to keep up with updates because I've had to put out a new game. There's a balance to be struck there, but
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of updating to be done by everyone. I think it takes time away from new projects, but yeah, kind of people expect it on the App Store. They expect things to be refreshed or fixed when there's bugs, minor things, but people have come to expect that on this platform for sure. Um, we do have another question. Brett Nolan of App Addict asks, um, when you find your way back into board game app development, not if, he says, when, what game would you most like to bring to the App Store?
um, there's a lot. I mean, I guess I probably can't pick one, but I can tell you that um, when we come back, there's going to have to be a different approach to it, um, because either it's going to have to stay as more of a hobby thing, and so it'll take us longer to put things out. Um,
Right.
Or we're going to have to do what I think Playdeck has one of the things that they've done, aside from obviously going out and getting some really good funding, they've also made some really strategic choices in the titles that they've picked.
Right.
In terms of, it's not enough to just pick a game that's popular. You really have to have um, the long tail in mind, and okay, what other content are we going to be able to sell? What
Right.
expansions are there? That kind of thing. Because I don't think any of us want to see. People have asked me like that I've worked with in the past outside of the game industry, in the more traditional software world. People have asked things like, well, could you put out the game without online multiplayer and charge $1 for people to enable that feature? And
Right.
I just don't think that's going to fly, right?
Right. Because
But
our audience is very different than a lot of other audiences, I think.
yeah, that's right, and it's a good thing, right? Because we were able to, with very little uh, traditional publicity, we were able to sell quite a few games, just because the community is there, and we were able to make a name for Codito in that community.
Right.
Um, But yeah, there's so if, when, if, I don't, I don't know. Uh, Obviously, the revenue side of things will need to be different somehow.
Right. How important do you think, excuse me, how important do you think it is to, have a really good IP? It seems like more and more in premium games, the IP is what's selling them as opposed to necessarily the quality or the type of game. If you see the top paid games are almost all something from a known IP. Do you think that's really important? Like, not just making a great digital board game, but making the right digital board game.
Yeah, it certainly helps. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sort of obvious to say, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how many downloads you can get, right?
Right.
Um, and I think what a lot of people are realizing, certainly in terms of smaller indie type developers, um, you either need to have IP in your corner or you're going to have to spend a boatload of money on traditional advertising. It's
Right.
or go down the route of the, the path to the dark side of paying for downloads or all the craziness that exists in the App Store. And then that's sort of been part of it too, is that I really never wanted to go down any of those paths, and I still feel like they're just not appropriate for the board game audience, right? These are complicated games, and that's why we like them.
Right.
We want to have the features, particularly things like a good AI and being able to play online, because that's how we want to play the games.
Right.
So yeah, I think IP is actually very important. Um, but again, it's even that's not enough. I think it's got to be the right IP, and it's got to be done right as well. And and then you still also have to get a little lucky. And I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen. We've kind of there's been a and this just happens in every industry, right? When we came along, it was the Wild West, and
Right.
since then there's been a number of um, different developers that have put out some pretty big and successful games, and now there's a number of those guys that we haven't really heard from a lot lately. Obviously,
Right.
I'm being very public about that because, again, it's basically just me, so I don't have anybody to criticize me or say no, you can't release that publicly. But um, so we might be seeing sort of. I know this has happened in console games and PC games and things where there's an ebb and a flow, and there might be a time where bigger studios absorb smaller studios or those kinds of things. Certainly, I am aware, and I think it's public knowledge that Ravensburger is doing a lot more in terms of trying to do the development in house,
Right.
like that. So we might be seeing an era now where uh, it'll be the bigger names that will be publishing most of the games, and I suppose in some ways that's the way it should be. And I'm a big fan of the big names. So they've done some really good work. So there's nothing wrong with that. Um,
Right.
but I think there's just it's always the way it is, right? The smaller companies, it's harder for them to survive, and they're going to come and go.
Definitely. I think, yeah, and I think really what the community can do to help is just to really continue to, I don't know, we need to keep playing, we need to keep buying, and maybe not always wait for the sale. Maybe you know, think think of what your actions and the effects of them. I'm not saying we shouldn't wait for sales, and I know they're beneficial for people and beneficial for sales, right? Building that customer base is really important as well. But I think just think of who you're supporting and that you're almost always dealing with pretty small teams in this genre.
Yeah, for sure, and I think it's interesting because that is my understanding anyway. That's how the board game industry has always been,
Right.
and just because we happen to be uh, selling our product alongside the likes of uh, Rovio or Supercell, uh, we're sort of fortunate in that there's this nice big marketplace that it's easier to publish our games to. Um, but at the end of the day, you're still, like you said, we're still talking about small groups of people trying to satisfy a niche market, and I don't know exactly where things are going to go. I certainly will be following along because, of course, I'm a consumer as much as I'm a producer.
Right.
I guess a lot more so than I'm a producer, but uh, and I was going to say that too. For me, it's I can't guarantee anything, of course, but I can certainly tell people without a doubt that I have not lost my passion for making board games, and I haven't lost my passion for making games in general. So I certainly hope that you're going to hear more from me and Codito in the future. I'm just not quite sure what that's going to be or exactly when. And I really appreciate the fact that we have, I think, built up a pretty nice fan base, and um, I'm still working with Warren Bishop on his game Tesla's Revenge.
Right.
So that's kind of always been more of a uh, hobby game anyway, because the design has been in flux, and it's
Right.
Warren's first real game that he'll be putting out as well. So um, I'm interested to see if we get that finished in the next year or so. Um, I've always been very interested to see if we can capitalize on some of that customer base that we've built up. So we'll see.
Definitely. Well, I'm really glad that, we hopefully will see more from you. I've been curious to know more about Tesla's Revenge as well. So that'd be great if we could see that eventually. Let me see if we have any more questions. I can read some more embarrassing words if you want.
Sure, I don't embarrass very easily, but
All
it's
right.
very nice to hear.
um, well, Dominique from North Star Games, who you may be familiar with, um, he said, "I own every Codito game. I can't say that about any other iOS publisher. I just wish they had found a way to capitalize on their early lead in quality over other players in the industry. I will remember them fondly." So those are some kind words. Um, Ben Stanley says, "I've been a volunteer beta tester with Codito since the very beginning, playing all of their excellent games, including some of their that were never released to the public, like Through the Ages." They have shown a dedication to the board gaming hobby and the iOS platform that stands as a great example for all developers to emulate. Their passion and enthusiasm led to some overly optimistic release schedule projections at times, and some releases were a little rougher than others, but their frequency of updates and total commitment in a turbulent and rapidly changing market ought to be applauded by all who care about this industry or who just enjoy digital implementations of challenging and strategic physical games. Some of Codito's releases, like Le Havre, are masterpieces and work complex games into usable interfaces, even on smaller iPhone screens. The digital gaming environment is richer and far better off thanks to Codito's constant involvement. Their game sales are remarkable value, and I personally wish them the very best in all of their future endeavors.
Nice.
I definitely agree with that. um,
You can always count on Mr. Ben Stanley to give you the straight goods.
that's right. He keeps everyone honest for sure. Um, definitely. Trying to see if there's any others that I missed. Um, yeah, so I don't know if we want to check out one more game, or we
Brief
could.
history, come on.
Okay, all right. I'm going. Do this. All right.
Yeah, and I mean, just to speak to that a little bit, for better, for worse, whether it, you know, had anything to do with our success or our eventual hiatus, I don't know, but I have always really felt like, um, and it's a wider thing. Like I've really felt this about the community in general. I mean, you only have to look at Board Game Geek, and anybody who's been familiar with the site or has become familiar with the site. There's just this awesome community out there, and there's sometimes there's rivalries and sometimes there's competition and whatever, but just like I always think it's sort of a microcosm that the fact that we're talking about board games, because that's how it is when you sit down and play a board game, right? You might be competing against someone, but really you're actually pursuing a common goal of enjoying yourself and enjoying the game. But I've always been really thrilled with the community, both in terms of the designers and I've talked quite a bit with several of the other publishers, and not just the designers that we've licensed, but and everybody's always been very supportive of each other. And I think there's a real sense that we realize that we are in a niche, and we need to encourage each other and support each other to keep it going. So I've always felt like that was part of the mandate for me anyway. Part of the goal was to make sure we were answering people's questions on Board Game Geek and email and Facebook and all those things, and to support other developers. I've tried to go on and say some nice things when somebody else's release comes out, and I think that's just part of what we need to do as a community. And if we've, I have heard from, again, a few other developers that if only by nature of the fact that we were on the scene before a lot of people,
Right.
People have looked at the Codito games and Sage board games and kind of used them as a measuring stick, and in a lot of cases done better than we did, and that's great. I think it's kind of been back and forth. Certainly if Voting Monkeys come out with an update or a new game, or Playdeck comes out with a new game, I'm always going to download it and check it out and see what they've done that maybe we can try to emulate or learn from.
Right.
So that's been part of it too. So it is really nice to hear from the fans and other designers and developers that we have had some impact aside from just bringing the games to people.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think we are uh, we are a very small industry, and I think rising tide, what is it, raises all ships. I think that's definitely true. Yeah, I am going through a brief history of the world right now.
Time is flying by.
That's right. We're already in the second epic, I believe.
So this one's interesting, I think, because other than maybe Medici, I think Brief History is probably one of the more accessible games.
Yeah.
A lot of us, I think, there's the people that got their start with Settlers of Catan, and there's the people that got their start with Risk. Uh, I think those are two. I'm dating myself a little bit because there's a lot more choices out there these days. But I think for those of us in the kind of the old school, shall we say, those are two games that I think a lot of people get introduced to board gaming through.
Right.
And we certainly have. I certainly did pick some of the more heavy strategy titles as well, but I like Brief History because first of all the Ragnar brothers are awesome. Those guys are hilarious. I don't know if you've ever seen any of their Kickstarter videos. Or
No, I should check them out.
They have this wonderful British sense of humor, and they also happen to make these really great games. And so that was another one of those things where I was happy to get the license. I was happy to get to know those guys a little better and bring one of their games out that I think there's still some complexity to it. You can get into some strategy for sure.
Right.
But it's also pretty accessible too because it's Risk-like.
Yeah, it definitely has kind of like a small world Risk vibe to it. Civilization.
Yeah, I suppose it's maybe a little more like Small World because you're limited.
Yeah, but it definitely has the Risk kind of combat and stuff like that, which is interesting. I'm seeing that the AI prefers taking minor empires instead of instead of events. I think it's been pushing me. It's been pushing me towards minor empires every time. But hey, I just have to do what it says because I'm trying to do two things at once. Yeah, definitely. So, how did you get in contact with the Ragnar brothers? Just reach out like online, or have you met them in person before? Or
yeah, no, it's one of the few regrets that I have is that there wasn't really ever any travel budget.
right.
So pretty much everybody that I've talked to, it's been online. Occasionally, a Skype or phone call or whatever, but we live in a digital world, of course.
Right.
So yeah, and I love the fact that I think it's very fitting that Board Game Geek has been completely integral to the whole process. I would never have started at all if I hadn't found that post on Board Game Geek that Reiner Knizia was looking for developers. I used Geek Mail to get in touch with quite a few of the designers when I was trying to get a list of licenses built up. And then of course, it's been a great place, through you guys and our own geek lists and things to publicize ourselves and build a fan base.
Yeah, I mean your geek list is a very popular post. I'm subscribed to, and it's nearly it's updated very, very often. Sure. Yeah, I wish Aldi was here to take credit. I think Board Game Geek is a great tool for connecting, and people are so open. You can geek mail almost anyone, and they will respond. You could email them and not get a response, but you can geek mail them, and you will get a response, which is
it's true. It's very
impressive.
true. It's definitely a real sense of community, and like I said, there's like every other community, there's all different kinds of people, and you can obviously see the best and the worst of everything. But I don't think any of us would trade it for anything else. It's an invaluable resource. So there's a little plug. Anybody who's listening who for some reason doesn't know about Board Game Geek,
that's right.
Go there right now.
Make an account. Yeah. Sorry, one question. I'm being silly here. How do I surrender a location?
How do you? Oh, if you're taking over a country that you've taken in the previous,
Yeah, it's telling me
you should just
surrender.
you should just be able to drag an army over top of the resigned one. There you
Ah, okay, I got it. I got it. I see now.
go.
Sorry, it's been a little while.
It's all good.
Oh, I lost with 4 dice.
Dun, dun, dun.
There we go. Just took 2 dudes, but it's okay.
That is brilliant what they've done with the design in terms of, you know, I stopped playing Risk after a while because it got to the point where, it's just tiring to roll the dice so many times and have these massive armies. And it's fun for a while, but after a little while, I got tired of it. I think they've done a really great job here of, you know, making you have to think a little bit more about every attack that you make, but also still kind of giving you like the bonus that you just got where you attack the same country twice. Just those
Right.
little things that make the Ragnar brothers who they are. It's so great.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Let's see. Ooh, I'm being conquered. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a very interesting design. And I like what they've done with the world map, kind of, you know, changing the orientation a little bit and giving a different perspective on something we're used to seeing from our very Western point of view.
Yes.
Which yeah, think is definitely a plus. I
Yeah, and
remember,
another one that it was a no-brainer to use the source art because we knew we had that option.
yeah, definitely. All right, how many epics is this? 3 or 4? 4. Right. Okay. Forgot which one I'm on.
We're only halfway there.
I know. I'm only losing by 5 points. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of great things that were said. You should definitely check out. Uh, Chris, you should check out reading on Board Game Geek, and there's been a lot of great things that were said by several individuals. Um, One person emailed me and say their username is Little Idiot, but they said that Codito introduced them to you guys introduced them to Tigris and Euphrates, and which has become their favorite board game. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, it's awesome. And like I said, that was always one of my favorite things. Even though we have no actual interest in terms of revenue, in terms of generating sales of the original board games, but I always felt like if we could do that, then that would be certainly one measure of our success.
Right.
Because
Definitely.
that's part of what keeps the industry going, right? Is
Yep, that's very true. Someone's asking how we're doing the iPad. We're using a program to AirPlay it to the computer and then just sharing the screen on the computer. But probably should wrap up. We've hit about an hour. I think we've gone through quite a few great games. We were able to check out A Brief History of the World, which we're playing now. Checked out Le Havre. Checked out Medici as well as Raw, which are all great games. Definitely check out the rest of what Codito's done. Puerto Rico and Tigris and Euphrates. Am I missing any? Tikal,
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
I know. I've actually forgotten the list myself once or twice. So in this kind of a forum.
Yeah. I should have done my homework better, I guess. Memorize them better. Come up with a mnemonic device or something. Oh, I just told you not to send me notifications. Whoops. I will go turn that on. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being with us. And we're really grateful for what you personally and what your company has given to the hobby, and we hope to see you back very soon with more great games.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, again, I really appreciate everything you've done for us, and you can rest assured that I'll be lurking around on the site at least. And
Definitely.
well, I don't imagine that I will change the fact that I've always been, if anything, too open about what we're up to. So if I'm
I've
working
been
on
pretty
something,
open.
Board Game Geek will be the place that I will let people know about.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We're really grateful to have you, and yeah, we'll look for you. Tell us, keep us honest. Let us know what you're doing for sure. Cool.
Thanks again, Brett.
Thanks so much. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Again, if you posted a comment or a tribute, we will be handing out codes to some of the Codito games. If you have a request, make sure to post it, and I'll try to meet that request. And we will, yeah, in the next few days, we'll get those out to you guys. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and tune in next week. We'll be playing something else. I don't know what yet. Maybe Magic. I don't know. We'll find out. I'll let you know on Monday. Anyway, thanks, guys. Bye.